I see from what you said, Cozy, that you are going to be lurking because you are working. I think that's totally fine. Totally, totally, totally fine. No big deal. Um, this might not entirely be your cup of tea of a book, just because it's a little bit not fiction. A little bit nonfiction. It is not fiction. But I wanted to read it on stream partly for my own benefit because I've been wanting to read this book for a while, and also because um, it's not a readily available book. It is extremely like out of print and difficult to find. And while I was able to get a hard copy of this book, it cost me a pretty penny to get it. And I've genuinely found a lot of other people are struggling to find it. And I wanted to give them an opportunity to enjoy it, basically. I did speak with the author's wife at one point to ask if I could translate some of his works into English the best of my ability, um, because a lot of his works are still in his native language. And she had said that was okay. So I'm under the impression that it wouldn't be too much of a trouble to produce this work as well. Um, do. But I'm here for you. I don't care what you read, and I hope that came out okay. It sure did. Thank you. I appreciate that. Uh, but today is technically, um, what is it called? Oh, my brain. Why am I forgetting words? I literally just said it to somebody else. Damn it. Qualification day? Today is qualification day. I think that's the word I used. Today is my 7th day of streaming, according to the requirements for affiliation. So I'm hopefully it's today I can apply, like properly apply. I don't know how long it'll take them to get back to me, or anything like that. I'm hoping it doesn't take too long because that would be great to get that going. And I will probably deeply relax the number of times that I am broadcasting after I receive affiliation because um, that was the main reason why I've been literally doing work every single day, like streaming every single day, trying to get into that. So I'll get an email. So it's an auto uh, affiliation. Like you either get it or you don't get, or you don't qualify yet. So that's how that works. If it does, that's cool. Awesome. Great. If it doesn't, if I have to do something, that's fine. What was the other thing I wanted to report on? I can't recall anything specific. I might need to jump up real quick before I start and get something to drink because I am thirsty. I do have some water, but it's um hi, my darling Isle. It's so good to see your face or your name and your face probably. Uh the water is calcified, so I think it kind of tastes funky. Let me check it real quick right now. Oh no, it's not that bad. Little water ASMR. And that's actually another thing I wanted to quickly touch on, in addition to everything else. For anybody who might be watching this, who is coming in and expecting me to be doing ASMR right now and surprised that I'm not, there's 2 reasons for that. 1, daytime for me doesn't really necessitate ASMR. I'm not looking for that during the daytime. 2, ASMR would not necessarily be what I would call my channel. It's not necessarily an ASMR channel. I do ASMR on the channel, but it is specifically in direct relation to the fact that I am reading a book while doing it. I am a book channel. I am a writing and reading and book discussing channel. Consider me your weirdo friend who doesn't talk at the public book club because they've been made to sound like a weirdo because of their thoughts and opinions all the time, but will absolutely chatterbox you when given the opportunity in private. That's me. Um, what? Most of the things that I read are not exactly uh, pop culture books. That was something that was very, very briefly mentioned slash talked about with me when I moved into this room at this house with the landlady, the homeowner who's renting the room to me. She asked me, "Do you like books?" And I said, "Of course I like books." And she said, "That's why all of these different books are around in the rooms." She wanted to have not only have books available for people to read, but specifically for me to read because she had read them at book club. And I looked at some of the titles and I was like, eh. But she told me a really fun story about how she had gone to book club and there was one guy there out of a whole group of ladies, or at least people presenting feminine. I don't know their stories and I wasn't there to get the information, but the point being is that it was definitely one of those a wild male person appeared. They used confusion. All the ladies were confused kind of situation. And they did wonder if he was going to stick around, and he did stick around. And it was extra funny to the landlady because one of the books they had just finished reading involved um, self pleasuring with a big purple vibrator. And I guess for him, this was also slightly educational because he had never really understood how that worked in terms of like from the POV of a vagina having person self pleasuring. Wow, the topic just became so grown up. Anyway, we're going to get away from that now and we're going to get back to what I really want to do, which is reading and books. Isles is just like, "What the hell are you yapping about?" And Cosey's in the back being like, "La la 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 la. I don't hear any of this crap." It's fine. We're not going to go into that. Um, I'm going to get to reading. Um, I'm used to this. Remember? Yeah, dude, we talk about all kinds of shit back in the day. Uh, that hasn't necessarily changed. We just haven't spent as much time on the phone lately. As you may already know, as you may be aware, I don't experience friendship decay. So we are just as much besties as we were 20 years ago. Righty, righty. I go back to the first page, or not first page, the home page of my e-reader to check and see if the book is even on here. And if it is not, then I'm just going to have to read it off the screen. Nope. Yes. Maybe. Yes. Actually, my brain is at war with itself between songs, so I heard nothing. Okay. Works for me. I had gotten 14% into reading it on my e-reader, but to be perfectly honest, I don't remember a damn word of it. Part of the reason that I'm reading this book is for research for the book that I'm writing that I've had on hold for a minute because I've just had a lot of stuff going on and I didn't really have time to work on it. I was too distracted, etc., to really work on it. I am getting less, I don't want to say less distracted because that is absolutely not correct. But the reasons for my being unable to work on the book are starting to shift away from that. In that I want to read it or write it. I want to work on it again. I am interested in potentially getting back on to working on it again. Okay. So we're going to do the same thing that we've been doing during the nighttime streams. That is to say, we're going to be reading in sprints. And during those sprints, I'm not going to be interacting with or talking to chat very much. That doesn't mean that I'm not seeing stuff, and if I can wave or make a facial expression in response to something, I will. Um, but the point of me doing this right this minute, right now, is to do the reading, not to stop and talk about the reading as I'm going through it. When we do the breaks during the readings, that's when I will interact with chat. If there's any tip requests, that's when I will do the tip requests, etc., etc. So now you know what's up with that, and we can get on to it. Because I still would like to eventually save the audio, I'm going to make sure that my alert sounds are still on silent so I don't startle the shit out of myself or my readers, or my listeners or my audience. What is the word I want to use for that? I gotta think on that a bit. Anyway, let's begin. As soon as I adjust the brightness, and also the text is so much smaller. Oh my god. There we go. Auto. Natural light is on automatic. Here we go. Of Gods and Holidays by Jonas Trinkūnas. Preface. Until fairly recently, reliable information about ancient Baltic culture, its mythology and religion, has been scarce. The occupation of Lithuania and Latvia by the Russian Soviet Empire in 1940 cut off these two countries from the Western world and made them a part of Communist Russia. Even now, uninformed observers from the West regard the Baltic people as Russians. Nothing could be further from the truth. They differ from the Russians in language, which is not Slavic, in culture, religion, customs, and historical experience. It is worth noting that during the past 2 centuries, one of their defining characteristics has been their efforts to free themselves from the Russians, first Tsarists, then Communists, empire. The differences become even more prominent if one looks deeper into the history of these countries. Analysis of place names shows that in early times, the Balts lived in an area which extends far to the east of their present territory. Today, these lands are inhabited by Belarusians and Russians. When 1,000 years ago their Slavic neighbors accepted Christianity, the Balts retained their pagan religion for another 4 centuries. During that period, they established a powerful a, sorry, 1 second. During that period, they established a powerful state which incorporated extensive Slavic lands. When the first Renaissance thinkers appeared in the West, seeking to reestablish the frayed links to the wisdom of ancient Greece, the archaic Indo-European religion and mythology on which the Greek civilization was founded was still surviving on the southeastern coast of the Baltic Sea. The eternal fire was still burning in the pagan temple in Vilnius, and people still worshipped the mighty Trinkūnas and the even more archaic goddesses of earth and nature. It was only in 1387 that the sacred fire was extinguished in eastern Lithuania, and it took another full generation, up to 1413, for this to happen in Samogitia. At first, these changes affected principally the nobility. The conservative Lithuanian population maintained the traditions of their ancestors and secretly worshipped their gods for several centuries more. One of the first books to present the ethnology of this region to the general readers is The Balts by Maria Gimbutas, which was published in London in 1963. It provides considerable information about pre-Christian Baltic history, their culture, and religion. However, a single book cannot begin to exhaust this broad subject. The extensive collections of Lithuanian and Latvian folklore remain for the most part inaccessible not only to the reader who has interest in ancient cultures, but also to researchers in the areas of folklore and mythology. Most of the source material, as well as the studies which are based on it, have until now been unavailable. Excuse me. Most of the source material, as well as studies which are based on it, have until now been available primarily in the two surviving Baltic languages, Lithuanian and Latvian. This is one of the main obstacles preventing this segment of European cultural heritage from being more widely known. Unfortunately, at the present time, even anthologies and reference works dealing with European mythology contain almost no information about Baltic culture and ancient religion. Though the efforts of collecting, preserving, and interpreting the heritage of the Baltic peoples was never completely interrupted, during the years of occupation, this work could continue only with the utmost difficulty. The recent years of independence have therefore been seen as a virtual renaissance in publishing material. For example, in 1996, the first volume of Sources of Baltic Religion and Mythology was published in Vilnius. This is the first of a multi-volume work and encompasses source material from the earliest times available to the end of the 15th century. A very extensive compilation of mythological texts is being issued in multi-volume publications under the title Lietuvio Mythologia, Lithuanian Mythology. Volume 1 was published in 1995. Volume 2 appeared in 1997. This important study suffered a grievous loss when its initiator and main compiler, Professor Norbertas Velius, died unexpectedly in 1996. However, the groundwork has been laid and publication in this series should be continuing. Of great importance are the studies which systematize and analyze the extensive source material. In past decades, researchers have taken the next steps and have tried to reconstruct the ancient Baltic religious belief system and to trace their evolution. Important contributions in this area have been made by Professor Julius Gremias, a Lithuanian who lived and taught in France. He is one of the principal developers of semiotic techniques and has applied them in the interpretation of Baltic mythological source material. A key study in this area is Of Gods and Men, which is available in the English language. Another influential work, Tautos and Mites Beiskanta, In Search of National Memory, was published in 1990, both in Vilnius and Chicago, and has inspired researchers of the next generation. However, it is only available in Lithuanian. In the introduction of this seminal work, Gremius emphasizes the importance of the Baltic past to the entire field of Indo-European studies. He writes, religious beliefs must be considered as part of the ideological framework of those times. In this context, one can conjecture that the establishment and expansion of the Lithuanian pagan state was accompanied by a corresponding development of its religious structures. Keeping this in mind, the interpretation and restoration of the Lithuanian mythological systems is important for the entire field of Indo-European studies. Researchers in this area are waiting impatiently for the results of these inquiries. One of the younger generations of scholars who have taken up Dr. Gremius's challenge is Gintaras Beresnevičius. In 1995, he published a book entitled Baltų religienis reformos, The Religious Reforms of Balts. in which he convincingly demonstrated the dynamic nature of the Baltic religious system. He showed that under the influence of internal and external factors, the system evolved and changed, that this change was ongoing and was terminated only with the introduction of Christianity. It is to be hoped that with time, the studies mentioned above, as well as additional material, will become available to the English-speaking reader. With this text, we hope to make a modest contribution to this goal. The book is divided into 3 general sections. The first, of Gods and Goddesses, provides an overview of traditional Baltic religion and includes brief descriptions of major pagan deities. The second part, of Holidays, describes the traditional holidays, their meaning, and the customs and rituals which have survived to the present day. Representative articles are chosen from works of the above noted authors, and additional materials is supplied by A. Danzia from the USA, V. Vaiti from Canada, and J. Trinkūnas from Lithuania. The later authors treat the traditional Baltic religion not simply as part of the past, but also as a living presence which can offer a viable framework for present-day spiritual life. This is dealt with This is dealt with in more detail in the third and last section, which is appropriately titled The Living Heritage. Though the title suggests that both Baltic nations are covered equally, in fact, most texts are by Lithuanian authors and they reflect the Lithuanian tradition. By no means do we mean to slight our Latvian colleagues. It is just that during the preparation of this book, more texts by Lithuanian authors were available. Our special thanks goes out to Dr. Tupes Yanis, who gave permission to include his description of the Latvian Vieturba movement, and to Dr. V. Vaiki Friberga, who allowed her article about the Latvian Viennas to be reprinted. Both articles appear in the last section of this compendium. The editor and publishers express the hope that in future revisions of this book or in texts of a similar nature, the Latvian contributions can be featured more prominently. The book is illustrated with photographs taken during various holiday traditions in the calendar. And it crashed. Hang on a second. I might have to extend my timer by a few minutes because it's a PDF, the e-reader is kind of mad at it. There we go. Oh, it picked up from where I left off last time. Sorry, just a second. We need to also change the category of the stream because apparently the Talk Studio Streamlabs does not have the most updated list of topic choices for Twitch. Oh, for Pete's sake. I guess we can just take a break right now and we'll start over. We'll start the timer over while I do this. Okay. If you know me personally, you should be unsurprised that this is a book that I've been wanting to read, in addition to reading it on stream. Oh my God. Also worth noting is that this book was published in 1999, and unfortunately, no additional um, modifications slash revisions were made to the book itself. And while there is definitely still material being published about Lithuanian culture and ancient religion, etc., there's still the problem of it mostly being published in Lithuanian with not a lot of English options available. This is consistently causing my damn reader to crash. Okay. So what that's telling me is that I need to switch to the PDF, and I don't want to extend my screen. Or maybe I should try. I could try. Let me try. Well, so while I'm doing that, how's everybody's day been going so far? Have you taken your meds? Have you taken your vitamins? Have you been drinking water? Make sure you're doing that. Important. Body needs liquid. Your body is made mostly water. I don't want to watch hockey right now, TV. Thank you very much. Also, mute. Thank you very much. Ooh, you know what? I wonder if I can put it on my phone and broadcast it to the screen rather than treat it like an um, extended screen, not extended screen, extended monitor. Soda counts, right? No, it does not. You sassy McSasserson. You know very well that soda does not count as a hydrating fluid. But nice try. As a side note, neither does coffee. Tea, however, tea does count as a hydrating fluid, which just proves that tea is superior to coffee. Miss me. Miss me. Miss me with that hate. You can't get me. I'm moving too much. Anyway. Oh, come on. Don't be such a turd. Well, too late I drank both. What, coffee and soda? Well, I mean, I'm not surprised. Do I have to type it in manually? That's annoying. I don't want to have to plug it in. That would be even more annoying. Oh gosh, LG. Let's type that and see what comes up. No, wallpapers. What are you talking about, wallpapers? Come on. Smart chair. I wonder if there's an app. There might be an app. Smart chair. LG TV. Smart chair. There we go. Miracast? I mean, that would probably work, right? We'll give it a shot. Oh, Miracast the okay, I remember. I had Miracast a couple years ago. My body is 50% coffee and 50% soda, no water. That is a lie. But thanks for playing. Oh my body. I almost considered getting a massage today. Still a little expendier more than I'd like, so I was like really hesitant to Hello, Hirokushi. I don't speak Russian or Ukrainian. I'm sorry. Anglishkai. Anglishkai. I'm sorry. Slava Ukraina. That's about all I can say. Um, and I don't speak Lithuanian very well either. So if you speak Lithuanian also, unfortunately, I only speak English. I lost track of what I was going to say. Crap. Dang it. There we go. Let's see if that works. I'm also going to need to turn my lights on because it is starting to get dark. It is 5:45 Central Time. So you don't know what to do. It's okay. You don't have to do anything. They don't appear to be causing any what's it? They don't appear to be causing any problems by being here. They just had a question and that's all. Continue to add. No. Go back. Get out of freaking pop-ups, man. There we go. Go away. Here we go. Oh my god. Please. 4-7. No, in general, not mod stuff. Okay. I don't know how to help there, bud. You were working on your what's it, right? The overlays or whatever? Start mirroring. Cast settings not available on this device. Well, you suck then. Good grief. Fine. I guess we're extending the screen. I might be a little laggy for a second. Hi, Disturbed Nation. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you. Trying to get my e-reader keeps crashing on this PDF, so I'm trying to get it up on the screen behind me in my a field of view rather than your guys's, so that maybe I can read it that way. Why do you refuse to autocorrect or auto-connect, you bastard? Do I have to remove you every single time? That is stupid. I do not like that. How annoying. And I don't have a USB cord thing to make it like connect that way. So unfortunately, this is how we do it. Hopefully, I'm not lagging too bad right now. And if I am, I am so sorry. Come on. I'll be lurking as usual, but the important thing is I'm here. You are absolutely correct. And today should be qualifying day because this is the seventh day I've broadcast for the month. So just the fact that you're here and Cozy's here is, as my concurrent viewers, you've already done the job because I was already at 4, I want to say. So now it's just a case of getting the email. From what I understand. We'll see. Fingers crossed indeed. Please, please connect. Why aren't you connecting? Why are you being so dumb? I mean, I guess I could put it on the screen and just read it off the screen here if it doesn't want to do that. Maybe I should turn it off and turn it back on again. I hate that. Freaking low key, low basic ass tech responses. No! Damn it. Oh, ba. Freaking. Okay. Cancel. Connect. Do the thing. Do the thing. Why aren't you doing the thing? If I could afford to throw this laptop out the door, I would. Wait. Am I not even using the correct TV? Is that what it is? That would be what it is. Oh, yeah, I think that was what it was. Might need a cord. Maybe. I mean, we shall see. I would sure like it if it didn't need a cord. Unable to connect to streak. What? Come now. We did so well yesterday. I mean, not really. That is not true. We did not do well yesterday. That is why we had to turn the TV off. Couldn't connect. You fucker. Mm-hmm. Make with the connecty, please. I hate you so much. You bastard. Okay. How about this? We're gonna turn off the stupid Bluetooth. Hopefully nothing crashes. Okay. And now we're gonna turn it back on. This was not the content I wanted to deliver today. And we're gonna add device. Maybe. All right. I think it was the UJ We'll see. Maybe it's not the UJ. Maybe it's a different one. I could have swore this was the only TV that was available yesterday. Did somebody suddenly buy an LG TV yesterday and I didn't know? Okay, maybe not that one. Let's try this one. Come on. Please, 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 please. Why does everything hate me? It's not fair. Just imagine people freaking out as their TV is suddenly turned on. You know, I've seen videos about that, and it's always a little funny. I'm not gonna lie. All right, maybe we do Bluetooth connection instead. Maybe that will change and make it work better. I don't know. A bunch of stuff is coming up, though. That's weird. Okay. Network. Okay, so it is UF6. That's how I'll remember it. No. Motherfucker. Like, I've seen people post videos on YouTube about like connecting to people's printers and just like printing shit. And that was always funny to me. I know it isn't funny, but it is a little funny. Especially when it's like like harmless prank kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Nothing so serious causes any lasting problems. The actual file, I mean, maybe that's the next option. Yeah, I think that's the only option I have now. Okay, well, that's annoying, and I've wasted however much time it took to do that. I also might just need to what's the word? Wow, am I just not braining well today? Restart the computer, maybe? Is the word I was looking for. I don't know anymore. I do not know anymore. No, don't do that, please. Thank you. Okay, so I was able to bring it up on my screen. It doesn't appear to be causing any lag. So with that in mind, there might be some tippy tappies as I use my keyboard, to which I deeply apologize. Give me a second to find out where I left off. We will go from there. Oh, was it just that? Oh, okay. It was just to get to the next portion. I've been talking too Irish recently. There we go. Yeah, I need to turn the light on. It is quickly becoming ASMR bedtime story time in this house, and I can't have that right now. That's not the vibe. Oh boy. That should do it. Take off my sweater because I'm a little sweaty. Also not the vibe. Oh. Alright, am I in frame? I think so. Yes, that looks good. Oh, good enough. Okay. Getting my timer back out. There we go. The heading for this section is chosen in honor of Professor Maria Gimbutas, a leading authority on ancient European cultures and the author of numerous books in this area. Her seminal work, Of Gods and Goddesses, published in 1982, highlighted the central position that was accorded to female deities in the pre-Indo-European religious systems. Of her works, the Balts, published in 1963, besides including the first scholarly treatment of the early Baltic traditions, provided a broader depiction of pre-Christian Baltic culture and history. The book includes a chapter titled Religion, in which Professor Gimbutas uses archaeological evidence to amplify the available knowledge of early Baltic religious systems. In 1985, Maria Gimbutas published an updated and expanded version of the Balts where, utilizing her latest research results on ancient European culture, she presented a more systematic view of Baltic mythology and religion. In it, she has shown that the pantheon of Baltic deities has two distinct origins. The more ancient ones trace its roots to the matricentric goddesses of ancient Europe. The second one came from the more marital and patriarchal gods and goddesses brought by the Indo-Europeans. The updated version of the Balts is available only in Lithuanian, and in this collection we have included the chapter from this first version, which is supplemented by fragments of major significance from the updated book. The section included 2 additional overview articles by noted authorities. One of these is the late Norbertus Velius, who before his untimely death in 1996 worked intensively in the field of Lithuanian folklore and mythology. Dr. Velius had an in-depth knowledge of folklore. He was not only a scholar in the field of Baltic mythology, but also a very active collector and systematizer of ethnographic material. What is probably just as important, he inspired many others to follow his example. Through the years, including the difficult years of Russian occupation, he organized numerous expeditions which collected and analyzed thousands of folklore and mythological artifacts. In 1983, he published the study The Life Philosophy of Ancient Balts in Lithuanian, in which he made use of the numerous facts of folklore and mythology at his disposition. In his synthesis, he attempted to explain territorial particularities of Baltic mythology by applying the principle of opposites such as east and west, low and high, water and fire, old and young. From Velius's extensive work, we include the key article, The Ancient Lithuanian Religion and Mythology in Christianity and Its Social Role in Lithuania, published in Vilnius, 1986. The original article incorporates numerous references and many specific examples taken from the folklore treasury, with which tend to make reading for the layman rather difficult. To make the ideas expressed in the study more readily accessible, we have ventured to shorten the text significantly, and it is to be hoped that more complete versions of Dr. Velius's work will become available in English in the future. The third review article in this section is by Gintaras Berencnevičius. The younger generation of researchers in the area of Baltic mythology and religion, accumulation and classification of facts is not enough. It must be followed by analysis and synthesis. Berencnevičius is a good example of this trend. In 1995, he published the study Reforms in Baltic Religion in Lithuanian, in which he showed convincingly that even in historical times, traditional Baltic religion was not static, but changed under the influence of cultural, political, and social conflicts which finally brought the country into Christianity. A discerning reader could well miss an article in this section by Professor J. Gremius. We greatly value the contributions of Dr. Gremius, but after reviewing it, reluctantly decided that it is probably too specific to be included in an overview type collection such as this one. To be appreciated, Dr. Gremius's work requires a broader framework. This is but one example illustrating that additional English language texts in this area are sorely needed. The three review articles are followed by a section of brief articles which describe the more prominent Baltic gods and goddesses. A number of these have appeared originally in Ramuva periodical. The authors are Jonas Trinkūnas, Audrey Stunzia from the United States, and Vilija Vite from Canada. Religion and Mythology of the Balts, written by Maria Gimbutas. And inasmuch as they, the Prussians, did not know of the Christian God, it so happened that they worshipped the entire creature world instead of God, namely the sun, moon, and stars, the thunder, birds, and even the quadruped animals including toads. They also had holy groves, sacred fields, and waters. Chronicon Prussae by Peter Dunsberg, 1326. It is with great amazement that the first missionaries in the Baltic lands, the chroniclers of the Teutonic Order and many later chroniclers, described all the incredibilia of the pagan religion, cremation rites, the beliefs in reincarnation, the veneration of holy groves, trees, fields, waters, and fire, the belief in the existence of many gods and spirits, sacrificial offerings, and soothsaying. The Teutonic Order carried the Christian cross to Prussia and to Livonia, and though they did succeed in conquering these people politically, they could not subdue them spiritually. The Prussian villagers remained pagan until their extermination in the 17th century, even though officially they accepted baptism in the 13th century and all pagan rites and customs were strictly forbidden. This was also the case in western Livonia, present-day Latvia. Lithuania accepted Christianity only in 1387 when the Lithuanian ruler Jogaila, also called Jagelo, son of Algirdas, married the heiress to the Polish throne, the Hungarian princess Jadwiga, and became king of Poland. Even then, while the Christian faith penetrated the palaces of the nobility and cities, the villagers retained the old religion for many more centuries. The customs, beliefs, mythological songs, and folk art symbolism of the Lithuanians and Latvians are amazingly replete with antiquity. The Christian stratum in recent and The Christian stratum is recent and can be easily detached. For studies of comparative religion, the value of the Lithuanian and Latvian folklore and folk art is of the same importance as that of the Baltic language for reconstruction of the quote, mother tongue, end quote, of Indo-Europeans. The pre-Christian stratum is so ancient that it undoubtedly reaches back to prehistoric times, at least to the Iron Age, or in the case of some elements, even several millennia further. What lies hidden in this storehouse of antiquity? Some of the elements of Baltic mythology hark back not just to prehistoric times, and not just to the prehistory of the Indo-Europeans, they reach back to even more ancient epochs. The culture of the earliest inhabitants of the European subcontinent is distinctly different from the one brought by Indo-Europeans. The study of prehistoric symbols and the comparative analysis of pre-Indo-European artifacts reveals that the mythology of almost all nations points to a matriarchal, chthonic, that is to say, earth-centered worldview. This brief structure, characteristic of agricultural societies, is lunar-oriented and is based on the renewal cycles of nature and of the moon. Matriarchal ideology is dominated by the creative power of all-knowing goddesses. It is remarkable that almost up to the 20th century, the Baltic goddesses such as Laima, Ragana, and Giltine, as well as Laume and others, have preserved traits that can be found in the characteristics of Greek goddesses as Athena, Hera, Hecate, which were recorded about 2,500 years earlier. For aeons, these traits were tightly woven with the universal issues of birth, death, and renewal, and were therefore more meaningful, more essential than the worldview represented by armed male gods. The image of these goddesses penetrated so deeply into consciousness that they could not be eradicated neither by the Indo-European nor by the Christian religion. Hi, 1102, thanks for coming by. There is no doubt that these goddesses reach us from prehistoric times. Some of their characteristics, for example, their ability to transform themselves into birds, snakes, deer, or bears, probably hail from the late Paleolithic era. Others, like their association with the fertility of the earth, probably were added as agriculture became dominant. All of them are associated with the mysterious forces of water, earth, and stone. It is from these sources that life is formed, and they represent this power. On the other hand, they also have a destructive potential, for their power is not always maintained in a controlled balance. The secondary goddesses can either be helpmates to the principal deities or serve to highlight some of their powers. Another feature of archaic European mythology is that the same or similar goddesses can appear under several names. Examples are Laima and Giltine, the three Laimos, the three swans. Also, they can appear in groups. Thus, there can be a large number of Raganos or Laumes. When this is the case, one of them is the senior. This feature reflects a matriarchal structure. The goddesses of archaic Europe are inseparable from earth and water, and while the Indo-European gods and goddesses are more strongly associated with the sky, its cosmic bodies such as the sun, moon, and stars, and such phenomena as light and thunder. This is characteristic of animal herding cultures. In most of the Indo-European languages, the names of the chief deities are similar. Thus, the Dievas of the Balts, Prussian Diewas, the god of sky and light, is related to Deus of the Daios of Sanskrit, the Greek Zeus, a transformation of Zeus, the Latin Deus, and the Germanic Tivas. In the Finno-Ugric language, the word for the sky is Taivas. This implies that it is a loan word from the Indo-European, which illustrates the association with sky and the light emanating from the sky. In some languages, the word has not survived, but the function has been preserved. Thus, there are clear parallels between the Trinkūnas of the Balts and the Scandinavian Thor and German Donner. All are gods of thunder. Comparative mythology proves that the Indo-European gods and goddesses have a common origin. In Baltic mythology, the most prominent Indo-European gods and goddesses are Dievas, in Latvian Dievs, his twin sons, the Dievosūneliai, in Latvian Dievadali, the sun Saule and her daughter stars, Aušrinė, in Latvian Askelis, the moon Menulis, in Latvian Mennis, the smith of the heavens Kalvis, also Kalvelis, Kalvaitis, the thunder god Perkunas, Velnias, in Latvian Vels, in Prussian Patolas, and the gods of fire, Gabia, Gabayauyas, and Yabauyas. When the Indo-Europeans reached the shores of the Baltic, Laima, the chief goddess of archaic Europe, was not displaced, but some of her functions were shared by the Indo-European god Dievas, who became the god of light, promoter of plant growth, and shared the ability to predict the future. In this manner, Baltic mythology acquired a dominant pair of gods, Laima and Dievas, who are analogous to Hera and Zeus of Greek mythology. Since they were foreigners and did not understand native languages, what the Christian observers saw and described is usually superficial. Therefore, the basic source in reconstructing the ancient Baltic religion is folklore. It supplements the written sources of recorded history and archaeological evidence. Baltic architecture was entirely of wood, as it was in all of northern Europe. Domos sacres and sacras villas, known from the documents of the 14th century, have not survived. Christian churches arose on the sites of pagan sanctuaries during the succeeding centuries. It was only in 1955 and onward to 1957 that, in the lands of the Eastern Balts, remains of a number of wooden temples and large sanctuaries were uncovered. Excavations by Tretyakov south of Smolensk, clearly showed that some of the fortified hilltop villages were not regular habitation sites but sanctuaries. Uncovered hilltop sanctuaries date from the 1st century BC to about the 6th or 7th centuries AD, and some of them revealed several successive layers with residue of round wooden temples. These certainly are the predecessors of the sacred villas known to the early history. Some of the sacred towns in central and eastern Lithuania, it is said, were important religious centers to which people from several provinces collected for religious practices. What was the purpose of the wooden post inside the temple found in some of these sites? It may have been either an image of a god or just a post capped by an animal skull. Until the 20th century, the skull of a horse or bull, or the horns alone, was believed in Lithuania to afford protection against the evil eye, illnesses in human beings or animals, hailstorms, or other natural perils, and was raised on a high pole whenever danger threatened. Until very recently, horses' heads, horns, male goats, rams, roosters, and other birds were used as gable decorations. These presences of the presence of priests who performed rites and recited prayers cannot be doubted. In the early historic records, they are continually mentioned as sanctiviri, auguri, nigromantici, and sacerdotes. In 1075, Adam of Bremen, writing about the Curonians, said, "All their houses are full of pagan soothsayers, diviners, and necromancers, who are even arrayed in a monastic habit. Oracular responses are sought there from all parts of the world, especially by Spaniards and Greeks. The priests were wise old men, chosen by the people and held in greatest respect. 16th century sources say that they were regarded as divine personages, similar to the Christian bishops. Peter von Duisburg wrote in 1326 that in the Prussian province of Nadruva, in the place called Romuva, there was a powerful priest named Gride, whom the people regarded as a pope, and whose dominion extended not only to Nadruva, but also Lithuania, Curonia, and Semigalia. Now we're going to have a little break. I'm going to make it 5 minutes. No, 6 minutes. No, 5 minutes. There we go. Hi, May. I'm here. Probably will be lurking. Probably will be somewhat lurking. Thank you for being here. I'm going to see really quickly if I can go into change category Twitch command. Creator dashboard. Pardon me. Here we go. Glad to see that the bit rate is pretty consistent also. I was really worried that the streaming quality was going to be garbage. But as it is, the only garbage that's happening right now is the camera slash audio. I'm gonna change that category to writing and reading. Bunk. Perfect. Fantastic. I actually kind of like that chat view better, so I might keep that. Fit page, fit width, actual size. No, there. There we go. All right, how are we doing on temp time? We have about 2 minutes left. I think I might make spaghetti for dinner tonight. I have all the stuff to make it. I think the only thing I wish I had was um, uh, like mincemeat or something. Although I guess I could shred the rest of the turkey breast into it. That could be nice. And I have some almond slivers with green beans as a freezer uh, vegetable. I think that'll work. What's everybody having for dinner, if you know? If you haven't already eaten. And if you have already eaten, what did you have for dinner? Actually, really, really glad that I stayed home today. Been pretty chill, all things considered. I wish I could have 3 days off in a row more often, but at the same time, I feel like maybe that's too much because I will go through the week and by the time I get to the day of before the day off, I'm like blasted. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to be happy or pretend to be happy. I don't want to mask anymore. Masking sucks. I hate it. Anyway, let's continue, shall we? No, that's not it. The only such pope known to recorded history, Prive was highly respected by the kings, nobility, and the common people, and his rule covered almost all the Baltic lands during the wars with the Teutonic Order. It is doubtful whether such powerful priests existed in the earlier periods. The emergence of priestly power in the 14th century may have resulted from the old religion being endangered at this particular period by the invasion of Christian enemies. Theocracy is not come on. Theocracy is not attested among the Baltic peoples. Political power was in the hands of kings. The pagan religion, however, was universal and profoundly influenced by all spheres of life. The custom of cremation persisted long after the introduction of Christianity and was abolished only as the result of a fierce struggle against the practice by the Christian missionaries. Lithuanian kings and dukes were cremated with great pomp and circumstance until the end of the 14th century. Algirdas was cremated with 18 horses in 1377 in a forest north of Vilnius. He was cremated with the best horses, clothes, breastplate, silver belt, and was covered with a gown woven of beads and gems. Algirdas' brother, Kęstutis, was interred in a similar manner in 1382, and splendidly could be seen in a deep pit in man's length, full of ashes, and nothing there escaped death. Horses, clothes, weapons, etc., all were consumed by fire. Hunting birds and dogs were also cremated with him. Logos, written writing at the beginning of the 15th century, mentions that Lithuanians had hearths in holy groves, each family and house, along with horses, saddles, and costly clothes. Livonia in 1413 noted that there was a sect among the Curonians who still cremated their dead in full dress and with the costliest ornaments on a pyre of pure oak wood in a nearby forest. The sacred groves there were the cremation sites were performed were usually on a hill or elevation mm, called Elka. The Anglo-Saxon traveller Wulfstan, during his stay in the lands of the Prussians, also known as the Estians, about 880 to 890, happened to make extremely valuable observations about the creation of before cremation and about the funeral races. And there is among the Estians a tribe that can produce cold, and therefore the dead whom they freeze can lie so long and do not putrefy. If anyone sets two vessels full of ale or water, they contrive that both be frozen, be it summer or winter. To preserve the dead, keep them unburied for a long period, was a custom deriving from the earliest antiquity, probably universal in all Indo-European groups. For the protracted funeral meals, the Baltic Shermanius, the word being connected with feeding, steri, to feed, sterti, to feed, oxen were slaughtered. Lamentation songs, the raudos, surviving still in the villages of Lithuania and Latvia, and mentioned in written records since the 13th century, must certainly have been a part of the funeral wakes at prehistoric burials. Even when at war, the Balts needed many days to lament the dead, the deceased, and cremated them. Thus, in 1210, had to stop the battle for 3 days for cremation and lamentation. The dead were lamented, praised, and bidden farewell, so as to ensure that they would safely arrive in the kingdom of the dead and stay among parents, brothers, sisters, and other relatives. The Christian missionaries regularly, but even so, the raudos have survived up until modern times, thus preserving beautiful pieces of lyrical and extremely touching folk poetry. The death of a farmer had to be immediately announced to his horses and cattle, and when a beekeeper died, the bees had to be told, otherwise the animals and bees would die out. The horse was not allowed to carry its master to the cemetery. If it did, it would sicken or die. These beliefs, still held in Lithuanian villages at the beginning of the 20th century, are the last traces of the great empathy that existed between man and animal. In prehistoric times, it was believed that the animals went to the other world to live there with their master. During the 1st century AD in Prussia and Lithuania, horses were buried in the standing position and in full attire, ready to be mounted. Duisburg, in speaking of the Prussian religion in 1326, clearly stated that the Notdagians, one of the central Prussian tribes, used to be cremated on horseback. Deceased warriors and farmers, it was said, rode their horses through the sky to the realm of souls, and on horses they usually return to Earth to visit their families and to attend the Feast of the Dead in October, and on many other anniversaries. Written records of the 17th century mention that during the Feast of the Dead, the intestines and skin of a horse were brought to the grave in order to help the dead ride to the horse's house, to the host's house. Internet is struggling, oh no. During the protracted wars between the Teutons and Lithuanians, the chroniclers who described the protracted struggle often expressed shock at seeing how readily the Lithuanians took their own lives. The most horrifying incident occurred in 1336 in the castle of Pilinai on the river Numinas. When the Lithuanians perceived they could no longer hold out against the Teutons' onslaught, they lit a huge fire, threw all their possessions and treasures into it, killed wives and children, and then offered up their necks to the chief, the Duke Margiris, for decapitation. During this same siege, an old woman decapitated with an axe 100 men who voluntarily accepted death at her hands. Then, when the enemy broke in, she split her own head in two with the same axe. The chronicler Wigand of Marburg, who described the scene in his rhymed chronicle of 1393 to 1394, described the spectacle as defying belief and ended with the words, "However, it is not altogether amazing, since they did that according to their religion, in which death is accepted much easier." After an unsuccessful attack by the Lithuanians in Estonia in 1205, 50 wives of the fallen warriors hanged themselves. It is no wonder, writes Henry of Latvia in his Chronicon Livoniae, since they believed that very soon they would live together with their husbands again. In the light of these sources, the many collective graves that occur in the Baltic area from the Cal- Calolithic, Chalcolithic. Okay. In the light of these stories, the many collective graves that occur in the Baltic area from the Chalcolithic period can be attributed to the obligatory death and burial of the surviving wife, husband, child, or children upon the death of a member of the family. When When the feudal chief or the king died, not only the members of his family, but also his servants marrying with people was forbidden by the Christian faith, but echoes of it are still to be found in some customs and folk songs of the Latvian and Lithuanians. Thus, at the funeral of a betrothed girl or boy, the burial ceremony is more likely a wedding. Wedding songs are sung, dances are danced, and both the living and the deceased partner are dressed in wedding costumes. It was believed that dead relatives and friends also joined in celebrating the wedding. Even in this century, the Lithuanian girl has been known to bring a wreath of rue, the symbol of chastity, to the grave of her beloved. The wedding of the dead is not simply connected with belief in the continuity of the earthly life after death, but also with the belief that people who died unmarried and all those who died an unnatural death are a danger to the living, since they have not lived through the whole span of life. In the Baltic languages, the word for the devil or for the evil spirit, the velnias, derives from the dangerous dead who return and threaten the living. The Baltic veles, etherealizations of the deceased, go to live their family and communal lives to a sandy hill, a hill vel, where they have their houses and household artifacts. This has gates through which the veles enter and benches on which they sit. These features recur in descriptions of the afterlife in Latvian and Lithuanian folk poetry. The verses seem to have preserved the image of the ancient burial mounds, the wooden chambers or stone vaults. Many passages in Latvian folk songs speak of a cemetery on a sandy hill, often so full of graves that there is no more room for new arrivals. They may reflect the communal Bronze Age barrows with hundreds of graves, or the Iron Age barrows with a number of graves of one family. If the realm of the Veles on a high sandy hill Sorry, let me try that again. If the realm of the Veles on a high sandy hill in a neighborhood of the village reflects the more realistic side of this people's belief about life after death, there also exists an imaginary hill or a steep stone mountain which the dead have to climb. Therefore, they need to have strong fingernails or the aid of God, resides and summons the Veles. Here we begin to see the connection between the gods, Lithuanian dievas, Lettish dievs, abode, and that of the dead. Further, we learn from the mythological songs that the goal is not the hill, which is the image of the sky, but a place beyond the hill. The path to this mystical place is a long one. The Veles may ride on horses through the sky. They may rise with the smoke of the cremation pyre, or fly like birds through the Milky Way, which in Lithuanian means the bird's way. They may also go by boat, as does the sun at night through the waters of the sea. The, the, the Daugava, or numinous rivers, to the west. There the sun sleeps, where she washes her horses, and there other gods appear. Dievas, the thunder god, Trinkūnas, the moon, Menules, and the deity of the sea. And somewhere in this remote place are the grey stones and the sun tree, the iron post, and at the post two horses. These represent the cosmic tree of the Balts, the axis of the sky, having close in folk leaves, copper branches, and apple tree. And when she rises, a Latvian song, the end realm of Daushos, of a mystic, the Greek cyclone anima, did not to animals, and immediately it would issue our specific tree is its human count. Trees grow for their new evils, the old spirits into the Kujins, and so it looks. Am I visual sounds? Visual sounds to the ones that I got later. It is on mute. Yeah, it's my body temperature. If it was hot, I think set it to those like it. Temperatures, great. That might be Waiting for me. Everybody was good, and I had to go to a different stream and come back. I don't know how to. I don't know. Is anybody else having that issue? That's so weird. That's so weird. Okay. Amiri, are you having that problem? Um, Miles, are you having that problem? Please let me know. I'm about to pick up where we left off. Okay. Some would also be reincarnated into wolves, bears, dogs, horses, and cats. In the Protestant cemeteries of the mid-19th century in Prussian Lithuania, the area of now known as Klaipėda, wooden tombstones were often resembling the shapes of toads or other reptiles, combined with motifs of flowers and birds, and other tomb monuments were capped with horses' heads. The conception of death and the afterlife thus had a dualistic character. The Vele and the Ciela are very different entities. The Vele is a bloodless, bodiless spirit, whereas the Ciela is the essence of life, power, and energy. This dualism can be explained by recognizing that these entities are inherited from different religious systems. The Vele from the Indo-European, the Ciela from archaic pre-Indo-European Europe. Earth is a great mother. All life comes from her, humans, plants, and animals. In Latvian, she is called Žemės Mate, Mother Earth. In Lithuanian, Žemyna, from Žemė, Earth. Her anthropomorphic image is vague. She is the earth holding the mystery of eternal life. She is called by such picturesque names as the blossomer, the bud raiser. Her functions are distributed among several minor deities of forest, field, stones, water, and animals, who in Latvian folklore acquired the names Mother of Trees, Mother of Fields, Mother of Springs, Mother of Domestic Animals, and so on. Cardinal Oliver Scholasticus, Bishop of Paderborn, in his description of the Holy Land, written about 1220, refers to Baltic pagans as follows: they honor forest nymphs, forest goddesses, mountain spirits, lowlands, waters, field spirits, and forest spirits. They expected divine assistance from virgin forests wherein they worshipped springs and trees, mounds and hills, steep stones and mountain slopes, all of which presumably endowed mankind with strength and power. Man is born of the earth. Babies emerge from springs, pools, swamps, trees, or hillocks. As recently as the 18th century, Lithuanians offered gifts to Žemyna upon the birth of a child. Earth was to be kissed in the morning and in the evening. Offerings to the power of the earth, such as ale, bread, grains, herbs, or a sheaf of rye, were interred, laid in front of stones, attached to trees, or thrown into the sea, rivers, lakes, and springs. According to 17th century records, there were no festivals in villages during which the earth deity Žemyna was not venerated. During the festival in the month of October, next to Žemyna, the Lithuanians venerated the homestead deity Žemypatis or Žemininkas, who was considered to be a brother husband to Žemyna. The deity of the homestead also appears in Lithuanian as Dimstipatis, from Dimsti, homestead. Latvians have Majas Kungs, the master of homestead. A separate deity was the lord of the fields, the Lithuanian Laukpatis, from Laukas, which means field, and Patis, meaning lord, or Lauksarges, the guardian of the fields, from Sargas, the guardian. And there were deities or spirits of flowers, foliage, grass, and fields of meadows, rye, flax, and hemp. The corn spirit hid in the rye or other grains fields and was believed to be incarnated in the final sheaf which was reaped. Lithuanians used to make this sheaf of rye into the shape of a woman. It is still called rugiobova, the crone of the rye. She was brought home, celebrated at the harvest festival, and then kept in the house until the next year's harvest. The corn spirit of the Prussians assumed the shape of a rooster called kurki, known as kurce in the Latin texts of the treaty between the Teutonic Order and the Prussians of 1249. A rooster was offered during the harvest festival, and in the fields some ears of corn were left to the corn spirit. Trees and flowers, groves and forests, stones and hillocks and waters were endowed with miraculous life-giving forces. They were thought to bring blessings upon human beings by healing diseases, safeguarding them against misfortunes, and assuring health and fertility. All manifestations of the earth's fecundity were lovingly cared for and protected. The written record from the 11th through 15th centuries repeatedly mentions a deep respect for groves, trees, and springs. And the ignorant ones, i.e., the Christians, were forbidden access to the sacred forests or groves, Sacrosanct Sylvan. No one was permitted to cut trees in a sacred forest, to fish in sacred springs, or to plow in sacred fields, which were referred to variously as Elka, Alkas, or Elkas, and were guarded by a taboo. The name itself shows that these reservations of virgin nature were untouchable and protected places. The root word alk or elk is related to the Gothic als, Old English ale, Old Saxon alla, the protected, invulnerable. In the holy alkas votive offerings to the gods were made, and human cremations took place. The usual animal offerings were boars and pigs, he-goats, sheep, calves, roosters, and hens, as testified by the excavation and the historical records. Since the holy places were imbued with silence, a number of sacred hills and forests in East Prussia and Lithuania carry names having the root Rom or Ram, which means quiet. One of these is the sacred hill of Rampienas, on the north bank of the lower Numanus near Tilsit, mentioned in records ever since the 14th century. A stone with a flat surface formerly crowned this hill, and votive offerings were placed on it by newly married couples seeking fertility at home and good crops in the field. The water found up on Rambinas was eagerly sought after for drinking and washing. Forests and towns called Romuva, Romaniae, and the like have historic traditions going back to the ancient sacred places. The 14th century records mention a sacred town, Villa Romene, in central Lithuania. Oak, linden, birch, maple, pine, and spruce trees were prominent among the sacred groves. Particularly the old, mighty, twin-bolded trees were believed to possess strong healing powers. They were untouchable, none dared cut them down. Historic records since the 13th century mentions sacred oaks consecrated to the god Trinkūnas, or sacred linden trees consecrated to Lema, the goddess of fate to which offerings were brought. A ditch or a stone circle surrounded such trees. A stick from an ash tree, a twig of juniper, elder, willow, or southern wood, Artemisia arboretum, or any green bough was regarded as effective weapons against evil spirits. Forests had their own goddesses and gods. Mediene, the name from the word medis, which means tree, was the Lithuanian forest goddess, attested in 13th century records. 17th and 18th century records mention a male god of the forest, Giraitis. In Latvian folklore, we encounter a forest mother and a forest father. And also, excuse me, and there were also a mother of shrubs. A peculiar earth deity living under elderberry bushes was Pushkaitis, who ruled over good little subterranean mannequins called Barshtukai or Parshtukai and Kaukai. If offerings were made to Pushkaitis, the little men brought plenty of corn and did the housework. During special feasts for Bartushkai, tables laden with bread, meat, cheese, and butter were left in the barns, where the little men used to come at midnight and eat. In return for these generous treatments, the farmers were rewarded with bountiful crops. In songs, trees and flowers are not realistically described, but their essential parts are emphasized: the bud and the crown, the vitality and the fecundity. A green linden has grown with 9 branchlets and a gorgeous top. A tree is usually 3, 7, or 9 stories high. It is a living symbol, guarded in folk art by twin figures or heads of male animals, horses, bulls, stags, he-goats, swans, or it is encircled by suns, moons, and stars, or else a bird perches on it. Plants in the folk songs have golden or silver buds, and the birds atop the tree is a cuckoo, the prophet of human fate. A peculiar cosmic tree of Baltic people was the wooden roofed pole topped with the symbols of the sky deities, suns, moons, and stars, and guarded by stallions and snakes. Right up to the present century, roofed poles, as well as crosses with a sun symbol around the cross arms, could be encountered in Lithuania, in front of homesteads, in fields, beside sacred springs, or in the forests. They were erected on the occasion of someone's marriage or illness, during epidemics, or for the purpose of ensuring good crops. Though none of these perishable monuments are more than 200 years old, their presence in pre-Christian times is attested by historic documents describing them as relics of the old tradition. Damn it. Christian bishops instructed the clergy to destroy the poles and crosses in front of which the peasants made offerings and observed pagan rites. The Lithuanian roofed poles and crosses managed to escape destruction because the people fixed some of the Christian symbols to them, and gradually they came under protection of the Catholic Church. They are, nevertheless, monuments stemming from the pre-Christian faith, as well as examples of Lithuanian folk art, their symbolic and decorative elements manifesting direct ties with the art of the Iron Age. Old legends abound regarding huge stones containing holes or footprints. To drill a round hole into a stone was to fecundate the earth forces which resides in the stone. Rainwater falling into these holes acquired magical properties. Until quite recently, Baltic peasant women coming home from work would stop by such stones to cure their aches and pains by washing themselves with the water. Stones are found in the Baltic lands into which symbols of suns and snakes were chiseled, much as they were elsewhere in northern and western Europe from the Bronze Age onward. A large stone in the shape of a woman's torso, located in Lithuania during the 19th century, was believed to possess magical qualities that would bestow fecundity on the alleged barren woman. From the description given in 1836, we learn that in Lithuania there were stone monuments, usually about 6 feet high, smoothly cut and surrounded by a ditch, which were dedicated to the goddesses who were believed to spend their time at the stone, spinning the fate of men. In 1605, a Jesuit reported a stone cult in western Lithuania. Huge stones with natural surfaces were called goddesses. Such stones were covered with straw and venerated as protectors of crops and animals. A large number of rivers and lakes are called Šventa, Šventoji, Šventupe, Šventežeris in Lithuania, and Sveta Upe, Svetupe, Svetais Iris in Latvia. A Sveta Latvian, excuse me. The names coming from the words Šventas or Šventa in Lithuanian and Sveta in Latvian, that which is sacred or holy. Also, there are many rivers called Alcupes, all of which were sacred and venerated in antiquity, and some of which are still held in esteem. Some, excuse me, no one dared defile their life-giving water, which had purifying, healing, and fertilizing properties. If one gave them holy water, flowers and trees would blossom bountifully. The fields were sprayed with holy water to ensure good crops, the animals sprinkled with it to keep them healthy. Washing with clear spring water would heal eye and skin diseases. At the beginning of summer, during the Sun Festival, the present St. John's Night, people would go swimming in the holy waters so that they would be healthy and beautiful, and so that young people would soon marry. Holy were those springs and streams which flowed towards the east, toward the sun. Water spirits were beautiful women with elongated breasts, very long hair, and a fish tail. They were mute. When people happened to see them, they would stare back silently, spread their wet hair, and hide their tails. Historic records mention, and folklore has preserved, the names of separate deities of rivers: Lithuanian Upinis, the lakes, Lithuanian Iriginis, and of the sea storm, Lithuanian Bangpūtis, Bangpūtis, the god of waves, who sails over the wild sea in a boat which has a golden anchor. The Latvians had Jūros mother of the sea. In the 16th century, descriptions of Prussian gods we find Atrumpas, god of the sea and large lakes, Patrumpas, god of rivers and springs, and Bardoites, god of ships. There was also a separate deity of the rain, the Lithuanian Lietuvonės, known from 16th century sources. The deities of waters demanded offerings. To the river god Upinis, for example, white suckling pigs were offered lest the waters not be clear and transparent. All right, another break. How's everybody doing? Uh, Hopefully good. I'm not seeing very much talk, and that's fine. I know most of you claimed that you were lurking and just listening. Though I would love to hear thoughts and feelings and opinions about the writing as you have them, but don't feel like you have to. That's also fine. I am having a lot of thoughts and feelings as I'm reading. I'm remembering folk stories and tales that are amalgamous from some of these things. It's just another example of cross-cultural exchange, which I find to be really fascinating. As much as I find um, adaptions to be fascinating, I mean, in a way, they're kind of the same thing, because adaptions are just a retelling of the same of a story in a way that is maybe more approachable, whereas cross-cultural exchange of folklore and legends and all that, it has a lot of the same effects. You see the stories end up having the same characters but with different names and more culturally um, recognizable attributes and such. I'm so sorry, buddy. I stepped away for food. No, don't be sorry. You're fine. I'm just rambling on break. I should probably be using break to rest my vocal cords, though. I know the Lithuanian mermaids have a name. It isn't mentioned in the text, but there it is. Undine. Undine is the first time I came across the word Udine was in the video game Legend of Mana, the water spirits that you can sometimes find in order to enchant musical instruments and stuff is Undine. And me not knowing Lithuanian pronounced it like a Westerner, which was to pronounce it Undine. But it's not Undine, it's Undine, because the E has a different pronunciation. It has a dot over it, which gives the word emphasis sounds different. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. I'm not a linguist. Linguist. I'm not a language studier or a linguist or anything like that, but I have a couple of friends who are. Maybe I'll have them come on as guests at some point or another. I think at one point or another I would love to read some uh, fairy tales, Lithuanian fairy tales, because I have a book that has fairy tales in it specific to Lithuania. And part of the reason also that I'm interested in Lithuanian stories and history and culture, etc., is because I am part Lithuanian, more specifically Eastern European, strong emphasis on Prussian, so a mixture of Lithuanian, Latvian, Ukrainian, Polish, etc. I don't have the exacts because my family never cared enough to keep all of those things, but it was something that I started studying when I was in my early 30s, I want to say. Anyway, let's continue. Yap, 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 yap. Here we go. Fairies called laumes, peculiar naked women with long hair, dwelt in forests, near expanses of water and stones. On occasion they mingled with humans and were yearning for motherhood, Frequently they used to kidnap infants and small children and dress them in the most attractive clothing. They could be extremely good-natured as well as extremely short-tempered. They represented the irrational woman. They could work fast and spin and launder rapidly, but once angered, they would destroy their handiwork in an instant. A superior goddess common to all Balts was Laima, the goddess of fate. She dispensed human happiness and unhappiness, as well as determining the duration of a person's life. She controlled not only human life, but also that of plants and other living things. Her name is inseparable from Laime, happiness. Fate usually appears in the shape of this one deity, but it is referred to in stories as 3 or even 7 goddesses of fate, analogous, I always mess that word up, analogous to the Greek Moire and the German Nornen. In Lithuania, songs she is sometimes in Lithuanian songs she is sometimes called by a double name, Laima Dalia, happiness and fate. The Latvians also have Dekla, who was very sympathetic to humans, took care of small children, and grieved over the birth of a baby who was destined to have an unhappy life. Laima, though standing close to the earthly life, is related in her functions to Dievas, the sky god, and to the sun. The earth's great impulse for giving birth was matched by the dynamism of the sky and the male element in nature, endowed with the life-stimulating and evil-combating powers. The animate and dynamic forces of the heavenly bodies, sun, moon, and stars, and the phenomena such as thunder, lightning, fire, and the rainbow, male animals like the stag, bull, stallion, he-goat, ram, rooster, swan, and other birds, and such reptiles as snakes and toads, were all believed to exercise a great influence on the development of plants and of animals and human life. The divine significance of the life and light-bringing powers inspired the personifications of the sun, moon, morning and evening stars, thunder, and bright sky, giving rise to the image of sky deities. Male animals and birds and reptiles, because of their sexual nature or their ability to prophesy the change in the weather and the regular awakening of nature, became inseparable associates with the sky deities. The Baltic pantheon of sky gods is closely related to that of all other Indo-European groups. To belong to it belong Dievas, Proto-Baltic Dievas, the god of the shining sky, related to Old Indian Dyaus, Greek Zeus, Roman Deus, the thunder god, Lithuanian Perkūnas, Latvian Perkons, Prussian Perkonis, in name and function, are closely associated with the Slavic Perun, Hittite Peruna, Old Indian Paryana, Celtic Hercynia, as well as to the Scandinavian Thor, German Donner, and Roman Jupiter. The oak, the tree of Perkunas, in Latin is Quercus, which comes from Percus. Saule, the sun, is very closely related to Vedic Surya and Savitar, the early Greek Helios, and the other Indo-European sun gods, though the Baltic Saule is of a feminine gender. Lithuanian Menuo, Latvian Menės, the moon god, Latvian Auškelis, Lithuanian Aušrinė, the morning star and goddess of the dawn, related to the Vedic Ushas and its counterpart, the Lithuanian Vakarine, the evening star, both being personifications of the planet Venus. Among the sky gods, there was also the divine smith called simply Calvis, smith, or in diminutive form Calvelvis or Calvitis. The prominent among the divine animals was the horse, the escort of Dievas and Saule. In mythological songs, the horse, Lithuanian žirgas, Latvian žirgs, is so intimately related to Saule, the sun, that sometimes it seems to stand as a symbol for the sun. Next in importance was the he-goat, Lithuanian Ogius, escort of the thunder god, symbol of virile power and weather prophesying animal. Common Indo-European roots of these gods and their associates are incontestable, especially in that the Baltic gods preserve very ancient traits and have not lost their ties with natural phenomena. The sky, the sun, the moon, the stars, the thunder. Except for Dievas and Trinkūnas, the anthropomorphic images of the gods were not very strongly developed. The name of the god Dievas is directly connected to the sky. The Lithuanian Dievas and the Lettish Dievs still have preserved the meaning the sky, as in Sanskrit. The etymology of the gods' names is clarified by the Sanskrit verb dyut, to shine or beam, and the adjective divuso, of the sky. Dievas is represented as an extremely handsome man, dressed in a silver gown, a cap, his clothes adorned with pendants and with a belt and a sword attached. This image undoubtedly goes back to the late Iron Age, being very much akin to the appearance of a Baltic king. He is inseparable from his horses, 1, 2, 3, 5, or 9, or more, all in silver bridles, with a golden saddle and golden stirrups. His large fenced homestead recalls a cattle, having 3 silver gates and comprising a manor, farmhouses, and steam bath, with garden and forest trees around. It is located beyond the sky, beyond a stone, silver, gold, or amber hill. From this hill, Dievas rides on horseback or in a chariot or sleigh of gold or copper, holding golden reins ending in golden tassels. He approaches the earth very slowly, extremely carefully, lest he shake off the dewdrops and blossoms of the snowball tree, lest he stop the growth of shoots, lest he hinder the work of sowers and ploughmen. He raises up the rye, he steps on weeds. In Latvian mythological songs, he appears sowing rye or barley from a silver basket, and among other things, hunts and brews ale. Dievas is the guardian and stimulator of crops. In these functions, he is closely related to the sun, moon, and Venus. He is endowed also with the power to control human destiny and the whole order of the world. On his account, the sun and moon and the day are bright. With Laima, the goddess of human fate, he determines the lifespan and the fortune of man. Although Dievas possessed higher powers than other gods, he was not considered to be the supreme god and to rule others. In the pantheon of the sky, Dievas was friendly and democratic. His homestead and his sons, Latvian Dievadėliai, Lithuanian Dievo sūneliai, were particularly closely associated with Saule, the sun, and her daughters, who also had a castle with silver gates beyond the hill in the valley or at the end of the water. Saule's anthropomorphic image is vague, but more important is her journey over the stone or silver hill in a chariot with copper wheels, drawn by fiery steeds who are never tired, never sweat, and never rest. Toward evening she washes her horses in the sea, after which she sits on top of the hill holding the golden reins, or goes down to the apple orchard in 9 chariots drawn by 100 steeds. She also sails in a golden boat, or is herself a boat, which sinks into the sea. The ball of the setting sun is pictured as as a sinking crown or a rain or a red apple falling from the tree into the water. The falling apple makes the sun cry, and red berries on the hills are her tears. The sun's sphere is also a jug or a ladle, since the light of the sun is conceived as a fluid substance. In the evening, Saule's daughters wash the jug in the sea and disappear into the water. The daughters may have signified the light that the sun sheds at dusk and at dawn, and may have been connected with the evening stars. During the Midsummer Festival on June 24th, the sun was thought to be adorned with a wreath of braided red fern blossoms, and she danced on the silver hill wearing silver boots. In songs, Saule is rolling, hopping. In the Latvian songs about the sun contain the refrain ligo, ligot, meaning to sway, or rotat, from rotat, to roll, to hop. In folk art, the sun is depicted as a wheel, a circle with rays, a rosette, or a daisy, in Lithuanian called saulutė, little sun, or ratilas, wheel, wheel, the flower of the sun. The dynamic vigor excuse me. The dynamic vigor of the sun, the regularity of its daily journey, its influence on verdant life and on human happiness was a great source of inspiration for countless verses of ancient Baltic poetry and Baltic folk art. Spring and midsummer festivals, present as Easter and St. John's Day, were festivals of joy, of the resurrection of nature, during which sun symbolism played a central role. The farmer's life was regularly guided by prayers to Saule at sunrise and at sunset, for all field work was entirely dependent on the sun's beneficence. Prayers to Saule had to be said with one's head uncovered. Menul, or Menes, the moon god, was a very close associate of Saule's. Like the periodical appearance of the sun, the moon's disappearance and renewal in the forms of a young moon brought well-being, light, and health. It is still believed that flowers must be planted either during a new or a full moon. Prayers were especially useful to the young moon. The moon god of masculine gender wore a gown of starry night and was drawn by grey horses. Frequently he was at the silver gates of Saule's castle, courting her daughters in Latvian mythology. Even he even married Saule herself, but being unstable, fell in love with Aušrinė, the Lithuanian morning star. This angered Saule, and the thunder god Trinkūnas broke him in two in Lithuanian mythology. He finally married the weaver of the star canopy, and while counting the stars, found that all were there except Auskelis, Latvian morning star. The Prussian mythology knows another god of light, who in the records of the 16th century appears as Svaitix or Svaitix, in which in Lithuanian will be Švaigždės or Žvaigždė, the star. I probably really butchered that word. I'll have to learn it later. Calvitis, the heavenly smith, hammers at the end of the waters or in the sky a ring or a crown for the dawn and a silver belt and golden stirrups for Dievis' sons. Every morning he hammers a new sun, a ring, a crown. When he hammers in the clouds, silver pieces fall down upon the waters. In Baltic mythology, Calvitis or Calvelis is a figure similar to Hephaistos in the Greek, Wolunder or Welent in the Scandinavian, and Ilmarinen in the Finnish mythologies. His hammer was gigantic. Jerome of Prague, a missionary in Lithuania, noted in 1431 that Lithuanians honored not only the sun, but also an iron hammer of exceptional size. With its aid, the sun was said to have been freed from imprisonment. Damn it. Trinkūnas, the thunder god, ruler of the air, is a vigorous man with a copper beard, holding an axe in one hand. He traverses the sky with great noise in a fiery two-wheeled chariot drawn by a he-goat. When thunder is heard, a proverb says, "God is coming, the wheels are striking fire." His castle is on the high hill in the sky. Trinkūnas is very just, but restless and impatient. He is the great enemy of evil spirits, devils, and unjust or evil men. He seeks out the devil and smites him with lightning. He throws his axe at evil people or tosses bolts at their dwellings. He does not tolerate liars, thieves, or selfish and vain sons. The tree or stone that has been struck by lightning provides protection from evil spirits and cures maladies, especially toothache, fever, and fright. The stone axes dropped by Trinkūnas possess the power of fecundity. They are still called the bullets of Trinkūnas. Stone or bronze axes, battle axes, were frequently ornamented in prehistory by zigzags, the symbol of lightning, and by circles, the sun symbols. Miniature axes of bronze were worn as amulets up to the last epoch of the prehistoric era. All right, time for a break. Going to make it a slightly longer break because I need to use the bathroom. I'm going to put a little BRB on the screen so that anybody who might come in does not wander off. Whoops. No, not that. Come on. Okie dokie. Thank you, Z, for trying. I appreciate it. We still got about a minute, so I'm gonna nosh a little bit on this cereal that I got yesterday, literally yesterday. I feel super bad because it's a 30-ounce bag and I've already almost finished it. I'm going to put myself on mute so I'm not too loud. Well, now I'm annoyed with myself because apparently my freaking alarm went off a minute and a half ago. Go figure. Okay, back to it. Yeah, it's because I had it on mute. I told you that. Trinkūnas also purifies the earth, exorcising evil winter spirits. The first thunder in the spring moves the earth to action. The grass begins to grow rapidly. Grain takes roots. Trees turn green. In addition to horse and he-goat, the bull, the stag, and the swan were symbols of the virile, life-bringing powers. But the harmless grass snake, the Lithuanian Žaltis, played a prominent part in the sexual sphere. It was a blessing to have a Žaltis in one's home, under the bed or in some corner, or even in a place of honor at the table. He was thought to bring happiness and prosperity, to ensure fertility of the soil and increase in the family. Encountering a snake meant either marriage or birth. This mystically endowed creature is known to Lithuanian folklore as the sentinel of the gods. Jaltis are loved by the sun, and to kill one is a crime. The sight of a dead Jaltis causes the sun to cry, says the proverb. The very name for snake in Lithuanian, Jevaitė, shows association with gyvybė or gyvata, life, viability. Another mysterious wealth-bringing creature, known from the early records as well as the folklore, is the Aitvaras. He is sometimes, excuse me, he sometimes has the head of a Jaltis and a long tail which emits light as he flies through the air. Sometimes he is personified as a golden rooster. The Balts were great venerators of fire. Lituani sacrum colvat cumque perpetuum appellabat. I'm assuming that's Latin. Fire was sacred and eternal. Tribes had official sanctuaries on high hills and on riverbanks where a fire was maintained, guarded by priests, and in each house was the sacred hearth in which fire was never extinguished. Only once in a year, on the eve of the midsummer festival, was it symbolically extinguished and then kindled again. Fire was a goddess who required offerings. She was fed and carefully guarded and covered over at night by the matriarch of the family. The Latvians called this flame Mother of the Fire, Ugnis Mate. In Lithuanian, she is Gabija, from the verb gaubti, to cover. In Prussian, Panike, little fire. Fire was the purifying element and the symbol of happiness. Legends relate that fire was transferred to earth by Trinkūnas in a storm, or that it was brought by a bird, usually a swallow, which burned itself while bringing it. This is not the place to present in more detail all the incredibilia seen by Christian missionaries in the Baltic lands, or to betray the folk religion which still lives in folklore in surprisingly pure elements going back to the earliest antiquity. However, I hope that from this short survey, the reader will have gained a general impression of their nature. The Baltic religion has faithfully preserved the basic elements of ancient times. They are closely related to the early recorded religions of the Indo-European peoples, particularly to the Indo-Iranians. This is seen in the cult of the dead, the burial rituals, the healing powers of the sky and air deity, as well as the sun, snake, horse, water, and fire cults. At the same time, it has remained true to the peasant's perception of the real world and to his rich natural environment. sustaining his profound veneration for the living land, forests, trees, and flowers, and his intimate relationship with animals and birds. In speaking of the legacy of Baltic prehistory, we mean above all the ancient religion, which is incarnate in the cosmic and lyrical conception of the world of present-day Lithuanians and Latvians, and is an unceasing inspiration to their poets, painters, and musicians. Maria Gimbutas, The Balts, London, 1963. M. Gibutiene, Baltae Prehistorianaeus Laicus, Vilnius, 1985. Mythology and Religion of the Lithuanians. Norbertus Velius. The formation of the Lithuanian state occurred during a time of conflict with Christian Europe. This circumstance could not help but influence the evolution of the prevailing pagan religious system, which became an important factor in the unification of the state and one of its main sources of strength. During this period, the fight for independence became also a fight to defend native gods, and the native religion was increasingly perceived in opposition to "foreign" primarily Christian religions. Christian Europe did not help matters, since their main goal of conquering the lands of the Balts was only thinly disguised by their proclaimed mission to baptize the pagan population and to force them to abandon the old beliefs. In order to deflect this threat, the rulers of Lithuania entered into various compromises with the Christians. For example, they permitted the construction of a few churches and establishment of monasteries. Some agreed to be baptized, like Mindaugas. Others entered into negotiations regarding baptism, like Gediminas. These political compromises contributed to the promotion of religious tolerance. Especially the nobility adopted a flexible approach and paid more attention to those traits which are common to religious beliefs rather than dwelling upon the differences. This politically promoted tolerance led to a paradoxical situation in which those strata, which should have been the main defenders of the old religion, the rulers and nobility, were the first to abandon it. It remained for the common people to become the principal defenders of the old faith. The ancient traditional religion and mythology had permeated all spheres of human existence, and for a long time it constituted the foundation of their worldview. This belief system had an Indo-European core, which was augmented with locally developed features. For this reason, several superimposed layers can be distinguished in its structure. 1. The very oldest layer. This includes atavistic features from the most archaic cultural strata. 2. The Indo-European stratum. 3. The Baltic stratum. And finally, 4. The Lithuanian stratum. The later can be further subdivided into the 1. Aukštaitijos, literally highlanders, and 2. Samogitian or Žemaitija, the lowlanders, strata. In 3 contemporary sources, the principal god of Aukštaitija is called Nūna Dievas Andājas. Linguists and mythologists propose several interpretations of these names, though all agree that the key root of these names is the word Dievas. It has been established that for the Lithuanians, the first god among the gods, and also the most important, was the god of heavenly light. Analogously, some of the Prussians considered Ukapirmus or Okopirmus, the god of the sky and stars, to be the first among the gods, whereas the Samogitians called the principal god Aukštasis Visagirtis. I am butchering those. Evidence about the Lithuanian deity of heaven and light can be found also in the manner in which the Christian god is depicted in folklore. When he appears in songs and fairy tales, the Christian god has many traits which are characteristic of the Indo-European god of light. Thus he is depicted as concerned about order and harmony. He rules over nature and the fate of men. The early Lithuanians worshipped not only abstract deities, they paid great respect also to some natural phenomena and objects. Especially important were the sacred groves, the sun, and fire. The special honor accorded to fire is illustrated by the practice of cremation of the deceased. The Malala Chronicle, 13th century, included a story, the myth of Sovius, which relates how cremation of the dead was established in Lithuania and in other Baltic lands. A. J. Gremius is of the opinion that Sovius is a representation of a new direction in the religious development in which all chief deities had to have some association with fire. In the mythology of the Prussians, two brothers play a similar role, Videvutis and Brutanis, reported from S. Grunau from the 15th and 16th centuries. As depicted in the mythological story, one of the brothers was a king and the other a chief priest. The story relates how they brought order to the material and spiritual life of the Prussians, how they established laws, and finally how they immolated themselves and were subsequently worshipped as gods. The chronicler Dlugaus of the 15th century also accords first place to the reverence of fire. The veneration of fire is characteristic of all Indo-European religions. For example, in the Rig Veda of the Hindus, the first hymns are offered to fire and only subsequently are hymns offered to other gods. Fire was considered to be both an independent god and as the means by which one could communicate with the other gods. Almost all offerings were burned. The Logos, in describing rituals, mentions temples, priests, and idols. Especially relevant in his description of Samagishan funerary rites, he relates that in the sacred groves, each Samagishan family had a special location where they cremated the bodies of their relatives, dressed in white, festive clothes, and seated upon a steed. Near the pyre, sacrifices were offered for the benefit of the deceased. They put vessels there made out of oak bark and placed into them some food, which was similar to cheese, and poured mead into the fire. They believed that during the night the vele of the departed would come and partake of the food and drink the mead with which they had poured. They would gather in these same sacred places to celebrate a feast which took place around the 1st of October. At this time they would bring food and drink, and feast for several days, during which each of them placed offerings to the gods into his own fireplace. Dlugos also states that on the shores of the Nevinis River, a sacred fire was kept burning on top of a tall tower. It was tended to by priests who took care of it and should never go out. Later sources from the 17th and 18th centuries, chiefly recorded by Christian clergy, mention that the old religious customs are still being observed in some locations. For example, in 1718, the Jesuit Ostrowiecki relates that he met people who worshipped the sun and the moon, and who appealed to the sun and the moon to cure them from illnesses. He notes that in the north of Lithuania, the peasants still utter the names of 5 gods with worshipful reverence, and these are the sun, moon, lightning, fire, and bread. The earth cult was stronger in western Lithuania, in Samagisha. There more reverence was accorded to the gods who were responsible for the yield of the fields and for domestic animals. The cult of the Jaltis was more prevalent. According to a traveler to Samogisha in the 15th century, the patriarch of each homestead keeps a jaltis who lives by the haystack and is provided with food and receives offerings. In the later mythology of the Samogitians, and in some cases of the Alkshtaia, folklore personalities are sometimes confused with deities. For example, J. Lasky lists Ragana, a witch, Aitvaras, and Kalkai, a spirit similar to trolls. Ragana has traits similar to the traditional witch of folk tales, who lives in a lonesome hut in the forest. Aitvaras is the guardian of wealth and finds his abode beyond the fence of a homestead, whereas Kalkai are small creatures related to the souls of the departed. It is for them that food offerings are laid out. The ancient Lithuanian gods, the mythology associated with them, did not vanish without a trace. Rather, aspects of them were preserved in the rich and varied folklore, in the folk customs, the beliefs in magic and incantations. However, the relationship between the folklore and the early religion and its mythology is very complex and is still not adequately explored. Without going into detail, it should be noted that many traces of the ancient Lithuanian deities can be found in folk tales, in traits of folk characters which inhabit them, also in family rituals and in folk customs. Of all the available sources, it is Pretorius of the 17th century who has provided the most information about various Lithuanian folklore personalities, the Laimes, Laumes, Aitvaras, Kaukai, unusual persons, animals, and so on. He provides a sort of bridge which helps to understand both the folklore and to decipher the influence that the traditional religion has had on it. For example, among popular personalities appearing in Lithuanian etiological tales are the creators of the world, Dievas, the god, and Velnius, the devil. In legends, giants appeared, and their opponent is often Velnius. Numerous mythological tales also concerning farmsteads inhabited by Kaukai and Aitvarai. Laumes, Undines live in the vicinity. Natural phenomena like the wind, the cold, and also Laime, luck, fortune, are personified in the tales along with Giltine, the goddess of death. Some of these folk tales Some of these folktale personalities have maintained the names of the ancient deities, examples being Dievas, Trinkūnas, and Velnius. Others, though they do not appear in the lists of deities found in the early sources, have names which are of archaic Baltic and Indo-European origin. For example, Laime, Vejas, Laume, and Kaukas. Some of the personalities, examples again are Dievas and Trinkūnas, and to a certain extent Velnius, exhibit clear traits of the former pagan deities, though these are modified to various degrees by Christian analogies. For others, the relationship to the ancient gods can be established only by careful research. Such research has shown that the origins of Laumes, which appear in many folk tales, can be traced to goddesses who were responsible for fertility and the yield of crops. The Aitvari are derived from twin gods, the sorcerers, the magicians, and witches, Raganos, of folklore represent in part pagan priests, and so on. Many of the remaining folklore personalities also incorporate traits that they have inherited from the ancient gods and goddesses. It is to be hoped that these will be deciphered by future researchers. Bears. It should be noted that each religious system has its own hierarchy of deities. Besides the principal gods, there are deities of secondary and tertiary importance, and there are semi-gods and ancestors who have been endowed with divine features. There are demons, good and evil spirits, and so on, all of which can be found in almost all Indo-European religions, for example, Hindu, Greek, Celtic, and so on. No doubt these demons were also a part of the old Lithuanian religious structure, and traces of their characteristics can be found in folklore up to the present. Researchers have uncovered a close connection between some Lithuanian folk tales and ancient myths. Thus, V. Ivanov and V. Toporov have shown that these mythological tales about Perkunas and Vilnius are especially archaic and are related to fundamental Indo-European myths. All right, time for a little breaky break. Azzy, thank you for coming. I'm so glad to see you. As I said already to Z, I think you should eat the gummy bears first just because, well, I guess there's no real reason, is there? I mean, if you're going from bottom to top, it would be worms and then bears, right? But then if you think about it, bears, quote unquote, decompose by the worms. So bears and then worms would also work. So it really comes down to what you feel like eating. I think the bears, though. Lilfin missed you too, Azzy. I did manage to sneak into Drift's um, charity stream with Maggie. Maggie? Maggie. I keep wanting to say Maggie. With Maggie a couple, what was it, yesterday? I want to say, just for the hottest of seconds, right before I had to go to work. And I've missed streams with all of the regulars because work has been um, really cutting into my life. Hopefully that'll change. I don't know. We'll see how things go. Stop it. I've been given mostly night shifts, like midday to night shifts for the next 2 weeks, I want to say. So maybe I'll be able to come in on Drift streams a bit more, hopefully. I don't know about Froggy, though. Froggies are usually really, really late at night for me. It is good to see you. And I've also wanted to do like more stuff with you and the gang. Like I don't know, just because he's blah, blah. I am still here in the place that I've moved to. Spouse still has not joined me. Hopefully that changes very soon. I've heard a lot of progress recently reported. So hopefully things go well. Is there anything interesting else to point out that has been going on? I've been work has been a little rough the last couple of days. I got a write-up, which was not great. It's made me really frustrated and unhappy. I've been struggling with masking a lot. And because of that, that's part of the reason that I got my write-up, was because I was having a really hard day on a Saturday. I had to go and get my meds and then immediately go to work, and I was late to work, and then some of the other employees were shitty, and I could feel my temper rising, and I kept fighting myself the whole time, being like, it's not your place to be managerial. It's not your place to tell people how to do their job. You just have to focus on your work and doing your work. But their shenanigans were causing problems for me in working, which was why I could feel my temper slipping. And ultimately, I got my lunch pushed back, which made me even more frustrated. And when I finally did get my break, the shift leader came in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I talked about it in length in the Where Have I Been video that I have in the highlight section. If you feel like peeking at that, you don't have to, of course, but it's there. Long story short, because I was showing attitude, they wrote me up, and potentially It happened again yesterday because the shift leader came up and said that some of the customers had come and complained to her about hearing me saying that I was going to report her to corporate, which I hadn't said that. It wasn't those words. Um, I had said that that all the teenagers were breaking together, and it felt a lot like there was potential wage theft happening. I don't even feel like I said those exact words, but I definitely said something along the lines of, "I'm concerned and I might call corporate about it." And I think I was saying this to person at the register across from me, and that's what maybe got the people complaining to her about it. And I'm just everybody's friends with everybody else, and I hate it. I hate the small town vibe bullshit. It just feels so clicky and gross. And I don't like it at all. And my alarm has been going. What the hell is up with this stupid alarm not going off? What the fuck? Anyway, I'm gonna get back to it. I'm here to read books and have fun, not think about how shitty work is. It's fine, whatever. Get back to it. Focus, run. Fuck! Focus, bird. Focus, bird. Anyway, the Lithuanian folk tale Elge, Queen of the Jelties, reflects the myth and death of and resurrection of deities. The tie between some tales and old rituals is readily recognizable. For example, some of the folk tales include a remarkably complete description of ancient wedding rituals. Exactly that, Azzy. Many of the customs practiced during the Christmas Eve celebration, during New Year, and in the time before Lent incorporated elements of the ancient feast celebrations during the spring and fall equinoxes. Folk games and rituals still practiced in the 19th and early 20th centuries reflect ancient summer solstice rituals. Many archaic elements are to be found in traditional wedding, christening, and funerary rites. However, the folk practices during the celebrations associated with various agricultural activities have up to the present not been explored adequately. It is now, well, it is now becoming feasible to define the general worldview framework of the early Lithuanians on the basis of the extensive collections of folk art, symbols, folk tales, customs, incantations, superstitions, and other sources. The early Lithuanians, like other Indo-Europeans, pictured the world around them as divided into three vertical levels: the sky, the earth, and the underworld. This archaic depiction of the world often employed the world tree, a symbolic tree that is popular as a decorative element in many folk artifacts, including dowry chests, flax containers, and others. Oh shit. In various guises, it appears in songs, riddles, or orations, fairy tales, and incantations. Lithuanians, similar to other Indo-Europeans, also used the imagery of a mountain, a house, a ship, or a bridge to symbolically depict the world. It is not easy to establish how early Lithuanians depicted the horizontal order of the world. However, it appears that it roughly paralleled the vertical structure. Thus, east and north were equated to the spheres of the sky, and the west was analogous, and the west was analogous to the underworld. I'm going to do that sentence again. Thus, east and north was equated to the spheres of the sky, and west was analogous of the underworld. This analogy between the vertical and horizontal world order was fostered by the direction of flow of the principal rivers in territories east to west. In the early beliefs of many cultures, it is assumed that rivers arise in the sky and eventually flow into the underworld. In this respect, rivers have the same joining function as the world tree. It is evident from old sources that on the basis of the direction of flow for the main rivers, the early Lithuanians were aware that as one traveled from east to west, the elevation of their territories was decreasing. This relative elevation of the regions is reflected in the makeup of regional mythologies. Thus, the mythology of the Augustais is more oriented toward the sky gods, whereas the Samogitians deal preferentially with the earth. That is true also of the folklore, which has been gathered in the 19th and 20th centuries. Among the Augustai folktales commonly deal with themes which are associated to the mythology of the sky. In Samogitia, the more earthbound themes are popular. The Samogitian and the Augustaya mythologies are thus complementary, and together they form a single mythology. And together they form a single mythological worldview. This interesting complementarity probably originated a very long time ago and reaches back to the archaic dualistic order of society. More problematic is the origin of the tri-level structure. In the folk tradition, this can be narrowed down to attempts to explain the origin of the earth. Observing birth and growth in nature forms the basic concepts that enter into this explanation. In the Lithuanian worldview, the world tree symbolically represented the growth of the universe. For this reason, the tree was usually represented by a rapidly growing species. The underworld sphere, which is symbolized by the root structure of the tree, is considered to be of older origin. It represented the past, whereas the branch structure symbolized the future. In the mythology of the Lithuanians, as well as their neighbors, the underworld sphere is also associated with water. It is thus logical that the Lithuanians held that the primary matter of the world is water. This is evident from the etymological tales, which, though influenced by Christianity, have preserved archaic worldview elements. For example, we find the following descriptions. In the beginning there was no earth, no sun. There was nothing except water everywhere. In Lithuanian etymological tales regarding the creation of the world, two mythological personalities, Dievas and Velnias, act in concert. For example, Dievas sends Velnias into the depths of the sea in order to bring back some earth. From the grains of sand, the seeds of the earth brought back by Velnius, the entire earth is formed. In the opinion of J. Meletinsky, this theme is very archaic and is equivalent to the creation myth in which the origin of the earth is associated with a primary universal egg. In Lithuanian etymological tales, Dievas and Velnius create not just the earth but also all the plants, animals, birds, and even man. Considering that the origin of these two deities reaches back to archaic Baltic mythology, it is evident that Dievas represents the god of light and day, where Vilnius is the god of the underworld and water. Such a worldview is not naive. Rather, it was developed by our forebears through an extended observation of their environment and is expressed in terms of mythological images of those times. The tri-level worldview also encompassed their concept of life and death. They conceived of life and death as a continuous evolving chain. The underworld was associated with death, the heavens with the future and life. On the earth itself, both death and life were present. For this reason, the afterlife was considered to be below, beyond the waters. Thus, Sovius, a personality in the oldest recorded myth, descends below the earth and becomes a guide to the underworld. After the introduction of Christianity, the underworld, the adobe of the dead, was associated with hell. For this reason, in the old texts, hell is called Haskanda, literally that which has drowned. Probably it was imagined that in order to reach it, one had to descend into the waters, that is, to drown. The dead themselves were usually depicted as anthropomorphic, though in folk tales traces of an older Indo-European concept can also be found. In this myth structure, the world of the dead is depicted as a pasture, and the dead themselves as grazing animals. This article deals with only a part of the issues that are raised in the restructuring of the Lithuanian mythological concepts. Until the most important area is not studied extensively, it will be difficult to decipher the ties that the archaic Lithuanian culture has with Christianity and with the present culture. Norbertus Velius, Synovius Lietuvio religia il mythologia, in Christionibus ir jos socialis Vaidmuo Lietuvoje, Vilnius, 1986. We are technically still 7 minutes out from being done. However, as Z pointed out, we have been going for 3 hours, and we are about to start another section, so this might be a good pause point. Switching to my laptop, so I'm still here, but I'm gonna take a nap and need my Spotify to sleep. Understandable. So, that in mind, let me take a peek. I'm gonna turn my camera off so I don't accidentally lag out, but I'm still here. You can still talk at me. Apparently I have a little icon with a little sound thingy. That's fun. Alrighty, hold on. I really, really hope that my tapping the up and down on my keyboard or on my mouse pad, my touch pad, I hate the touchpad. I hope that it wasn't so loud. I think maybe part of tomorrow I will spend purchasing a wireless mouse and maybe some better headphones or head I am so currently using and on rating out. However, I don't know if Sorry that I am quiet. I am not looking at chat. I am trying to find a good person to read. To read. Wow, my voice is cracking. That's awesome. Okie dokie. I don't know how much longer she plans to go, but I do see one person that I think I might do. He's reading Pictures of Dorian Gray. So let's go ahead and visit with Vexing Cat. Here is our raid call. And once again, I want to thank everyone who joined me today. Today, I believe today is qualifying day. So I'm super, super, super glad that all of you who are here with me for it. I will see you soon as I try and figure out a good schedule. And also, yeah, I will. I most certainly will. See you soon. Bye. Don't leave. Stay with us as we go to do the raid.